Hey everybody, my name is Jeffrey Jansen. Today is March 22nd, 2017. Today we are on chapter 11 of The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. We are on chapter 11, The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson, Diamonds in the Desert. Chapter 11, page 112, Diamonds in the Desert, The Dream Giver. Diamonds in the Desert. When the wind finally stopped, Ordinary stood to his feet. But as far as he could see, there was only sand. The path to his dream had disappeared completely. Obviously, his entire trip through the wasteland had been a waste. Hot tears coursed down his dirty cheeks. "You're not a dream giver," he shouted at the sky. "You're a dream taker. I trusted you. You promised to be with me and help me, and you didn't." Have you ever set out in faith, taking God at His word, only to run head-on into failure and despair? Sometimes when you risk everything, you lose everything too. Or so it seems at the time. In 1977, soon after Darlene Marie and I started walking through the Bible in our basement, we began getting requests for follow-up Bible teachings. A magazine seemed like a natural choice, so we launched a daily devotional magazine called The Next Meal. Our little publishing team felt strongly that God was asking us to proceed on faith. For us, that meant never charging for the magazine and never asking for money either. Our subscription list grew at a phenomenal rate. Testimonies poured in, thanking us for the ministry and submitting names of friends to be added to the list. But the mail brought only meager donations. Still, our contributors and advisors believed that God would honor our commitment. Even our printer said, "Don't worry, Bruce, I know the money will come." Every month we poured our hearts into it. Every month we waited on God, and every month we sunk deeper into debt. Why wasn't He providing for something we felt certain He led us to do? By the 5th month, we had spent all of our own funds. We could borrow no more, and we were more than $60,000 in debt. More than 5 years' salary for me at that time. Finally, I told our team that if God didn't provide money by the last Friday of the month, we would be forced to stop publication. Every morning, we got on our knees and begged God for the funds to do His work. Then we got up and went to work, full of faith that He would come through. But He didn't. At 5 o'clock that Friday, we held a somber business meeting. Order of business: to stop publication, write painful letters to the printer and our readers, and start working on a plan to pay back every cent of debt, which we did. The short, hope-filled life of the next meal was over. As we left the room that night, I told Darlene Marie, "Well, one thing is for sure, God never called us to do magazines, and will never do another one." But the hurt we felt went deeper than that. You see, we all felt that God had called us to do a magazine for Him. We had obeyed Him at a great personal cost, and then it felt like God had watched from the sidelines while we went down in flames. It was one of the most disillusioning seasons of my life. All our efforts had added up to failure and waste. As a result, I lost all confidence that I could ever lead again. As you might imagine, it didn't take long in that wasteland for my faith to wither. Before long, I felt adrift in anger and confusion. What a waste. If you have ever endured lengthy trials, or seen an important dream delayed, or felt forgotten by God, you know already how a wasteland feels. In fact, you might be in a wasteland of some kind right now. If so, you probably feel like Ordinary did. Like your big dream has turned into a long, miserable, unfair, complete waste. I understand, I've been there. But let me reassure you that you're about to read a chapter of great hope. Every dream chaser eventually winds up having a desert experience of some kind. When I asked an audience recently how many thought they were currently in the wasteland, 40% of the people raised their hands. But what so many dreamers miss during their trek through the desert times are the diamonds in the sand. Those extraordinary evidences at almost every turn of a generous and merciful dream giver at work. Do you believe me? At that time of my wasteland experience, I didn't know I didn't know what I'm telling you now. If I had, it would have prevented a long season of unnecessary pain and wondering. It wasn't until years later that I could look back on that season and see that God had been faithfully at work. What we couldn't know then was that He had plans for a different kind of magazine, the Daily Walk, and He was preparing us to accomplish it. Today, Walk Through the Bible publishes 10 magazines every month, partnering with ministries and around the world. One lesson I learned: charge for a subscription. $100 devotional magazines, 100 million devotional magazines later, it's clear that God didn't let us down. God just had a bigger dream than we could have achieved or even imagined at the time. And He wanted to grow our faith enough so that we could reach for the dream with Him. Gifts in the Wasteland. Just about every dreamer I've walked to around the world who has entered the wasteland is surprised to be there. Why? I've noticed a universal sequence of events. After we break free of our inner obstacles, our comfort zone, and find a way around our outer obstacles, our border bullies, we're ready for our dream to happen. In fact, we feel plenty tested already. We think, like ordinary, that our dream is just around the corner. But most times it isn't. Instead, we encounter a series of unexpected trials that never seem to end. No one prepared us for this. Delays and setbacks drag on. Soon, disappointment set in. Eventually, we begin to think we should abandon our dream. Does this sequence ring true in your experience? What could the dream giver possibly be doing for our good with a plan like that? I believe our unasked for desert tests are a series of invitations to grow up in our understanding of ourselves and of God, and in the strengths of our faith in Him. When the dream giver appeared to be nowhere in sight, Ordinary's faith began to fade. Before Ordinary could fight for his dream and win, he needed to change on the inside. He needed to learn endurance and trust. The wasteland does not happen because God isn't paying attention or because He's angry at us. It doesn't happen because we have sinned, although we can lengthen our time there. Instead, the wasteland happens for a good and important reason. It is an invaluable season of preparation. It is the place where God transforms you into the person who can do your dream. The wasteland is the dream giver's loving gift to dreamers with a future. The importance of being in over your head. I was eating lunch with a friend who has a PhD in leadership development. I asked him, based on all your research and experience, what would you say is the most important secret to developing world-class leaders? He put his fork down. Well, it's not a course, a lecture, or a book, he said. He then picked up his fork and started eating again. His answer intrigued me. I asked him to explain. The single best way to develop leaders, he said, is to take people out of their safe environment and away from the people they know and throw them into a new arena they know little about. Way over their head, preferably. In fact, the more demanding their challenges, the more pressure and risk they face, the more likely a dynamic leader will emerge. At first, his theory surprised me. It sounded unsafe and unkind. But on a second thought, it reminded me of many of my own experiences in the wasteland. In fact, God used a similar approach to raise up a leader in the wilderness on the journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. Training for greatness. There's just no way to get from Egypt to Canaan without traveling through a lot of wasteland. Even today, the Sinai Peninsula is one of the emptiest, bleakest places on earth. Surviving in that kind of terrain changes you. And the Israelites that entered the Promised Land were not the same weak-willed, complaining group that left Egypt. For one thing, almost all of the slave-born generations had died. Only a few remained. After 40 years, a new desert-tested generations had grown up. One man who saw it from the start to finish was Joshua. During that time of trial and suffering, which he hadn't asked for, and of endless delays, which he had done nothing to deserve, Joshua matured. He advanced from Moses' assistant to spy and warrior, and finally to the one person who was fully prepared to lead Israel after Moses' death. What had the desert years accomplished? When Israel was finally about to leave the desert, Moses told the nation that God had allowed the experience to happen for an important reason: to test and reshape each person from the inside out. The bottom line of every test in the wasteland is this: when God seems absent and everything is going wrong, will you still trust God enough to patiently allow Him to prepare you for what's ahead? I've noticed that the bigger the dream, the longer the time of preparation. Joshua spent years honing his leadership skills in prison, even though he was innocent. Before he rose to rule all of Egypt, David spent years hiding out in the desert caves, leading 400 men who were in distress, in debt, or discontent before he was fully prepared to become king. But like Joshua, Joseph, and David passed the test of the wilderness and emerged prepared for the big dreams, and you can too. Your gift comes with a price. God's motive and plan in the wasteland is to prepare you to become the person who can succeed at your dream. But the outcome of His action is up to you. Your response depends on how you answer two important questions. How much do you want your dream to come true? Do you believe in the dream giver enough to trust His purpose and accept His plan of preparation, even if you don't understand or agree with it? Let me read both those again. 1. How much do you want your dream to come true? 2. Do you believe in the dream giver enough to trust His purpose and accept His plan of preparation, even if you don't understand or agree with it? The Bible describes the trials you and I face in the wasteland as the testing of your faith. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. How can you count it all joy when the wasteland is all you can see in every direction? Obviously, the experience of the wasteland don't bring joy. They are painful. So how can joy live in the desert? Only when we understand that the reason we are to count it all joy is not because of the experience, but because of the result of the experience. Look again at this phrase, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. You see, the wasteland matures you, if you let it. In fact, everything you know, lack from upcoming fulfillment of your dream is being offered to you in the wasteland. God's promise is that you will lack nothing. When you emerge from the other side, when your lack is finished, the wasteland is finished. That is God's commitment to you and your future. And that's a commitment that can bring a great deal of joy, whatever the circumstance. Not surprisingly, the place we're most likely to experience testing is exactly where we struggle most to trust God. Think about the areas where ordinary was challenged to trust. Would the dream giver provide? Would He guide? Was He present? Would He keep His promises? Was His plan the best one, or was there a better one? These are universal areas of struggle and growth for dreamers trying to do big dreams. Therefore, you need to make a decision. Will you give God permission to do His work for as long as He wants, in the ways that He wants, to change you as deeply as He wants, to prepare you for your big dream? It's a huge commitment, but your dream is worth it. And your decision will open the door to joy in the midst of any circumstance. So refuse to buy into the lie that your wasteland is too hard. It's not too hard. It's not too long. Your tests in the desert are the best answers to one of your deepest desires and prayers. Please make me into the person I need to be to do the dream you have created me to do. Conversations with the Dream Coach. The most common wasteland question I'm asked is, what exactly should I do if I'm in the wasteland? Here are some suggestions. 1. Identify whether you are actually in a wasteland. Not all trials are wastelands. Ask yourself if you are already pursuing a dream or an enlargement of it. The universal experience of the wasteland feels like delay, waste, inability to make progress, and being pushed past your limits. 2. Isolate the main areas where your trust in God needs to grow. What in your dream do you really doubt God about right now? Ask those around you what they think God may be trying to teach you. Then hold on. Your friends often have seen it coming before you. Try to get on God's side of the problem and find ways to invite healthy change. 3. Install a few safety nets beneath you to encourage and protect you when you feel like abandoning the call of the dream giver on your life. Friends helped me through 2 long and difficult wasteland experiences, one in my 20s and another in my 40s. Both times I desperately wanted to flee back to the familiar, and both times their counsel and unconditional love kept me steady and on a path to completion instead of desertion. 4. Increase the amount of time you spend with the dream giver. Devote more time than usual to reading and studying the Bible. Focus on Exodus, Joshua, and Psalms. You'll be amazed at how many times you will find the answer you're looking for. Remember to ask God for the wisdom that He promises to give all of us who ask in faith. Pray about the specifics that trouble you the most, and keep a spiritual journal. I have filled many dream journals during the wasteland seasons of my life. Like many others, I find that I do best when I can work through my questions, emotions, and insights on paper with my dream giver. Instill a commitment deep in your heart that you won't turn back, no matter how long or how hard or how painful the path through the wilderness may be. Hold on to this key truth. Now the just shall live by faith. But if anyone draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. Don't turn back in the desert. The faith-filled dreamer. If we were walking together right now, face to face, I could know just by looking into your eyes if you are in a wasteland. I would recognize the signs of a soul under stress, the traces of pain and disillusionment, but I would also be able to see beyond the circumstances to the stronger, more faith-filled dreamer you are becoming. I have spent a number of seasons in the wasteland. Why? It was the dream giver's very best for me. That's all I know for sure. Yet I have a pretty good idea that some of that time I spent there are my own request. Of course, I didn't specifically ask God for more delays, frustration, and struggles. What I have begged Him for, though, was to enlarge the territory of my service for Him. More service means larger dream, and a larger dream requires more and more prepared dreamer. More preparation, more endurance, more faith. More settled conviction that no circumstance, difficulty, or turmoil can change the truth of my dream, or the trustworthiness of my dream giver. Do you, too, long to be a faith-filled dreamer who's prepared for all of God has for you in your life? I invite you to join with me in giving Him permission to accomplish that kind of transformation in whatever way He thinks best. Then turn your heart back towards your dream, confident that you never again need waste your travels in the wasteland. Alright, that was chapter 11, The Dream Giver by Bruce Wilkinson. Tomorrow, or actually later on today or tomorrow, we will read chapter 12, A Surprising Invitation. Okay? So I'm going to save that chapter there. And now if you go back and look at my motivation for today, you'll notice, look, it's like yesterday we were dealing with bullies. Today we're dealing with the wasteland. You might think there's not a purpose for you, but there is. So I'm going to stop this, and we are going to go ahead and read the next chapter of our book. Okay? That's it. Thanks, guys.